Good morning, everyone. Today we will start with the new topic. Sorry, the classification of the signals. We have talked about signals in our last 2 to 3 classes. What are signals we have seen, and how the processing of the signals they can help us in various areas. Okay. Now let's see how many signals are there and what are their types. The first one is continuous time and discrete time signals. Okay. The second one is analog and digital signals. Third is real and complex signals. Fourth is deterministic and random signals. Fifth is even and odd signals. Excuse me. Sixth is periodic and aperiodic signals. Seventh is energy and power signals. And lastly, we have causal, non-causal and anti-causal signals. Okay. Now we will be taking up one by one all of these types of signals and see how one signal differs from the other. The first type of signal classification is continuous time and discrete time signals. Okay. Now, in our previous classes, we have already seen what are continuous time signals. In short, I will write it down as CT signals, continuous time signals. Now, in the continuous time signals, what happens is that we have various sensors and we acquire the data from the sensors. Now, if the acquisition of the data is on a continuous time format, or in other terms, I mean to say, if the data is being acquired continuously, then the signal what we will be getting is an continuous time signal. Say for example, we have LM35 sensor. Okay. Now this LM35 sensor, it is an analog signal, analog sensor. That means it continuously generates the data. Okay. Now, if I apply some processing techniques, not digital processing techniques, I'm talking about analog processing techniques. So if we apply some analog processing techniques and we look into the DSO, we'll be getting a graph which continuously changes with time and we'll be getting some temperature values. Now it continuously changes like this. You will be getting some curve like this, right? Now, since the signal which is being generated by LM35 is continuous in nature, hence this signal it is regarded as continuous time signal. Similarly, if you consider that we want to measure some of the biological parameters of a person, say for example, we want to measure the ECG signal, so we place several electrodes onto the body. Those electrodes, it goes to a set of biopotential amplifiers. I've written it in short form BA. So BA stands for biopotential amplifiers. Okay. So in short, I have written it as biopotential amplifier. Now, for this acquisition of these ECG signals, say we have put a series of sensors onto the human body. Now those sensors are being connected to a series of biopotential amplifier, and the output what we will be getting over here is a continuous time signal. Because what is happening, the ECG signals within our body, they are continuously generating the signals from our body. The same thing happens with any other signals, biosignals. Okay. Now, in all of these signals, what I have discussed, say the temperature sensor, sensor output, or the ECG signal, or the EMG signal, whatever you talk of, what are they? They are signals which are basically continuous time signals, because their time domain is a continuous variable. There is no break within the signals. Okay. Now suppose you take this signal, say for example, this is the signal, this is the continuous time signal, say for example. Now I put or I multiply this signal with delta t. What is delta t? What is delta t? Any idea? No? Delta t is impulse signal. Now, what is the characteristics of the delta t? The characteristics of the delta t is that it is having a value of 1 or amplitude of 1 at t equals to 0. Okay, and at all other places it is having a value of 0. Now, if you multiply this signal with this one, what will happen? The signal, say suppose it starts from here. Now the signal which is being multiplied with the delta t, what will happen? Any value, say x, multiplied by 1 is equal to x, right? We know from our basic arithmetic. Now over here what is happening? At this point, at t equals to 0, we will get the value of the original signal. Okay. So this is the power of the impulse signal, right? Now, if I have to sample this, sorry. Now, if I have to sample this signal all throughout the continuous time domain, what will happen? I have to create a series of impulse signal, that are delayed with respect to time. So you can say I want to create a series of delta t minus of n ts summation of small n equals to say 0 to infinity. Okay. So what I have done basically, what is delta t minus n minus ts? This ts is basically the time period or the gap between two consecutive delta t. Okay, and n is the index. So what I mean to say, what is the basic representation of this signal? So I have one t, I have this amplitude value. Now at 0 we have seen delta t, it has a value of 1. Now after a period of ts, we'll be getting another. So in this case, our n is equal to 1. Okay. Suppose the time period ts is equal to 1 second, then our first value is at 0, the second value is at 1. Now when n is equal to 2, we will be getting another impulse signal 2, then we will be getting another impulse signal at 3 and so on. Okay. So if you look over here, what we are getting 0, 1, 2, 3. At these time points, I am getting one impulse signal. And see, this series of impulse signals, they appear as train. What is a train? In a train, we have an engine, right? We have an engine, and behind the engine, we have a series of bogies, right? Like this, we are having a series of bogies. So similarly over here you see there is a series of delta t. Okay, hence this sequence is regarded as the impulse train. Okay, impulse train, and it is given by the symbol delta t, capital T, T. Okay, so this delta t means impulse train. Okay, so if you see what will happen, we will get a series of one multiplier at equidistant time intervals. Okay, now when I multiply this delta t with this signal xt, then what I get, this gets multiplied with say 0, it gets multiplied, then after 1 seconds it gets multiplied, after 2 seconds it gets multiplied over here. So all of them having a value of 1. So what do we get? The corresponding result, I will be getting some values over here at 0 instant, at 1 second I will be getting some value over here, at 2 second I will be getting some value over here, at 3 seconds I will be getting another value over here. Okay, so what is this? These are not continuous domain signals. So what are these? At specific time we are having some values. Now why this is happening? This is happening because when we are talking about the impulse train, they are having a multiplier of 1 at 0 second, 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, 4 second, 5 second, but in between 0 and 1 second all the values are, all the time values, it will be having a value of 0. Similarly, in between 1 second and 2 seconds it does not have any value, that means it is having a value of 0. Similarly, at each intervals, we will be getting a value of 0. That means those values will be becoming 0 in between these time intervals, right? 0 and 1, 1 and 2, 2 and 3, all the values will be 0, and only at specific time instances. And in our case, we have considered that the delta train, its sampling frequency is 1 second, or sampling time period is 1 second. Hence, at 0 second we will get a value, at 1 second we will get another value, at 2 second we will get another value, at 3 second we will get another value. So, by multiplying the signal with the delta train, we can convert a continuous time signal to discrete signal, because the discrete signals, they are not continuous in nature. They will be having some particular values at specific times. Okay. Now, what is it? Now the thing is that in the next this one, if you see, if t is a discrete variable, that means it has values at specific time, okay, and at all other times it will be having no amplitude values. So if t is a discrete variable, just like 0 second, 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, that is xt is defined at discrete times, then xt is a discrete time signal. Okay, then xt is discrete time signal. Now the process of multiplying the impulse train with the original signal, like this one over here I have depicted that, this process is called sampling. That means at specific time we are gathering the amplitude values or specific information from the ft. We are not considering all the values within the signal xt. Okay, so this process is called sampling. Okay, now after sampling we get discrete time signals. Okay, any doubt? Any doubt? Do you have any doubt?
Sure. No,
No. Okay. So
no, sir.
now I will move forward to the next this thing. The representation of the discrete time signal. Now the discrete time signal, they are represented as xn. We have seen that continuous time signals, they are represented as xt. However, when we have discretized the signal, we change the signal and we represent the signal with xn. N denotes the time in the discrete domain. Okay, and we can represent the discrete time signal in two ways. In the first way, what we do, we have say xn equals to half to the power n. This is an example, okay, where n is greater than equal to 0 and 0 for n less than 0. Okay, so in this form we can represent one signal. So what does this says? That when n is equal to 0, we will be having a value of 1. Then when n is equal to 1, we will be getting a value of half. When n is equal to 2, we will be getting 1/4. Then n equals to 3, we will be getting 1/8, and so on. It will go on, right? up to infinity. However, at n less than 0, we'll be having values of 0. So we can represent it in this fashion, and then we can convert this signal into this form: 1, 1 by 2, 1 by 4 to 1 by 2n to infinity. Okay. So both these components, they are same, but the way of representation is different. So the first one is that we can represent the signals in an equation manner, in a phase-wise manner. If you see over here, n has been broken down into two sets for n greater than equal to 0 and n less than 0. However, if there is a need, you can break this interval into several parts. Okay. So this is the first method. What is the second method? Second method is xn, you put some values. Okay. The problem with the second method is that if you look into the first method, you are specifically telling at n equals to 0 what should be the value and what is the location of the origin. Okay, over here we definitely know what is the location of the origin. Now the problem, when you try to look into this type of representation where xn is given by a series of number, where is the origin, or at what instance we have the value of n equals to 0. If we put a series of numbers, we will not be able to understand. Now, to circumvent this, when we are writing in this form, we have to put an arrow under the number which corresponds to the value when our n is equal to 0. Are you getting my point? That means if you look into the previous instance, over here in this equation, so what I mean to say is that at this position, which is a value when our n was equal to 0, because when n was equal to 0, this function, it becomes 1. Okay, so at this position we should have put an arrow. Okay, but accordingly, if you look into this signal, this value, it means that this value is present at time equals to 0. But when you represent a signal, when it starts at n equals to 0, by convention, we may not put this arrow. It is understood that if there is no arrow in a series of numbers, then the first digit, it is the origin, or it is the origin value, or it is having the value at time equals to 0, n equals to 0. Okay. But if that is not the case, you have to be careful that you should mark the value over here with an arrow. Okay. Now, we have seen how we can represent the discrete time values. Okay. Now, when we are talking about the signals, we quite often want to do some mathematical operations on the signals. Say for example, we are having Cn equals to An plus Bn, which will give rise to Cn equals to An plus Bn, and then we are having multiplication Cn equals to An multiplied by Bn. Okay, and then lastly we may be interested in multiplying some constant with the signal an, so we will get this thing. So this an and bn, they are signals. Say for example, you can write it down as x1t and bn as x2t. These are all functions of time. And in discrete, sorry, this is an, so these are discrete signals, so these time domains will be the xn values. Okay, so we are having x1n and x2n. Okay, now how it works, let me create this thing. Yeah, so what we told, I told that suppose I am having x1 x1n, which is equals to say 1 3 5 3 1. This is one signal, and I say that this position is the origin. Okay, suppose I have another signal x2n, say I am having say 4 3 2 1, and this 3 is the origin. Now I want to multiply to get yn. How will I do it? The first and foremost thing is that we first have to match the origins. I will just write 1 3 5 3 1, and the origin in the second signal is this one 3 4 2 1. Okay, now once we have measured what you call match the origin, then we have to do the calculation. In this case, if you see, there is no values over here. If you have no values, then that means there is a value of 0. Okay, now you have to do the multiplication of the values of the same time indices in both the signals. Okay, so that means the first value will be 1 multiplied by 0, it will be 0. 3 multiplied by 4, 12. 5 multiplied by 3, 15. And this is the origin value. 3 multiplied by 2, 6. And then 1. Okay, so this will be the output of the multiplication of the signals x1n multiplied by x2n. Okay, now you can rewrite this equation. You can also write it down in this fashion: 12 15 6 1. Okay, because the 0 values at the beginning and at the last, they do not have any meaning. Okay, so you can eliminate that. However, suppose in some case you may have values like this: 0 3 5 12, and your origin is at this 0 value, then you have to write the value, because the 0 value will give you the indication where your origin starts. Suppose you have 0 0 3 5 12 and your origin is at this level, then also you have to write these things. However, if on the left hand side of the time domain, or you can say the negative n values, that means n less than 0 in this region, if there is any zeros, you may eliminate them. And also on the extreme right hand side, if you are having a series of zeros up to infinity, then also you can eliminate. However, in between, if you are having these arrow values, even though you have zeros till the negative of infinity, you have to put, or you have to put these zero values, and you have to show that where is the location of the origin. And below, or at negative n values, you can eliminate that. This signal can also be written in this form 0, 0, 3, 5, 12, because we have previously said if there is no indication over here, then that means the first value is the origin. So in that case, you have to write the 0, 0 values. Okay, otherwise you may not write. Am I clear? Is there any confusion?
Sir, if arrow mark is second zero, hello?
If arrow mark is second zero, you can just eliminate it. Why you want to put that? So it becomes the n equals to 0. So you may not put the arrow also. So it is 0, 3, 5, 2.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Anyone else having any doubt? No? Okay. Now, let us take another example. Let's take the same signal 1, 3, 5, 3, 1. Now we want to do the addition x1n plus x2n. We have to again match the origins. And this value is 0, we have already seen. Then in this case, what will be yn? 1, 7, 8, 5, 2. Okay. So this is how we do the addition of two signals. Okay. Now suppose the third method, alpha into x1, when I want to do now, what is this alpha? This alpha is a constant. We have discussed, right? This alpha is a constant. So what will be the yn? So say this constant is 2. So 1 multiplied by 2, 2, 3 multiplied by 2, 6, 5 multiplied by 2, 10, then 3 multiplied by 2, 6, then 2. Okay. So the scalar component, it gets multiplied with all the values, and at whatever location you are having the origin, at that location the origin stays. Okay. So multiplication with this one is pretty simple. Now you can talk about division. Now in division, what happens? Division, suppose you want to find out b by a. So it can be written into this form, b multiplied by 1 by a. So this is a constant, right? So the division can be achieved with the multiplication, and hence division has not been taken up separately. Okay. Yeah. Now we come to an very interesting classification of the signals, analog and digital signals. And just like any other students, I found in the preliminary classes that you people have also the same misunderstanding between the continuous time signal and the analog signal. Okay. In the analog signal, the definition of the analog signal is given by: an analog signal is a signal whose amplitude can take an infinite numbers of values. The analog signal do not have direct correlation with the continuous time signals, though we use it interchangeably. Analog signals are continuous time signals, but that is not correct. Analog signals, by definition, if you see, it is a signal whose amplitude can take an infinite number of values. That means the amplitude values of an analog signal may vary from minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay. It does not talks about the time. It does not talks about the time. You must remember that. Okay. Analog signal, they do not, in the definition, there is no mention about the time axis. Okay. So, in this regard, both the continuous time signal and the discrete time signal means what we have seen: continuous time signal multiplied by impulse train delta t t. Okay. So what are the values of these impulses? It is 1 multiplied by continuous time. Even if it is infinite, you will be getting infinite value in the amplitude level in the discrete time domain. Okay. So the discrete time signals, they can also have values in the range of minus infinity and infinity. Are you getting my point? So in this regard, both continuous time signals and discrete time signals, both are analog signals. Both are analog signals. Any one of you who is having doubt? Am I clear?
No, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now comes the
Yes,
digital
sir.
signal. What is a digital signal? The definition of the digital signal says, whose amplitude can take on an finite number of values. What is taking the finite number of values? Amplitude is taking the finite number of values. Again, over here, there is no mention of time. There is no mention of time. So, when we create digital signal, what is the process? the process is we convert an analog signal into digital signal through sampling and quantization. Okay. So if you are in the continuous time domain, it is a type of analog signal. So if you are in the continuous time process, then first you have to do the sampling by the process. I told you just in the continuous time and discrete time signal classification to convert the continuous time signal into the discrete time signal. And once we are in the discrete time domain, then we perform quantization. Okay, then we perform quantization. What is quantization? Quantization is rounding off. Okay. Now, when you are rounding off, that means you are limiting the amplitude values to specific numbers, which we'll be discussing in the next slide. So what happens over here, when you want to get a digital signal from the continuous time signals, first you have to do the sampling, then you have to do the quantization. Again, in the discrete time domain also, you may be interested in doing the sampling. Why? Any idea? Suppose you have sampled a continuous time signal in a specific say sampling frequency, but while digitizing it, you want to sample it again. Why you would want to do that?
After round off, sir.
No, rounding off is a separate thing. I am talking about just digital signals. In the digital signal, we are saying that there are two steps. One is sampling. This is the first step. This is the second step. I told you how to get from the continuous time domain to the digital signal domain. Okay. Now my question is, this sampling also holds true for the discrete time domain also? Because when we are talking about this digital signal, the process is, the first step is sampling and the second step is quantization. Usually we may avoid the first step if we already are dealing with the discrete time signal. However, you may do the sampling in the discrete time domain also. I am asking you, do you know why we may be interested in doing that? There is a signal
Okay, sir.
xt, which is a continuous time signal. You have sampled it in this fashion. So it has become now discrete time signal. Now, under normal circumstances, if you are going from CT, after this step, you can directly go to the quantization because you have implemented sampling. But for the conversion of the digital signal, what we have said that analog signal may be converted into digital signal. We have not said continuous time signal should be converted. That means there is a possibility that this DT signal is also sampled. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So why you want to again resample discrete time signals? Because it is already signal sampled in the time domain. Okay. Say for example, you sampled the signal over here. Okay. But at a later stage, suppose you are having 0 seconds, 0.5 seconds, then 1 second, that means your TS is equal to 0.5 second. Okay. But before digitization, you may be interested, okay, I don't want this much high sampling rate. I will only be interested in getting the values for sampling time period of 1 second. So what you are doing? You are reducing the number of samples from this original signal. Okay. So for reduction of the data in the time domain, you can again do the sampling of the DT signal. Okay. And once you have done that, then you can go for the quantization. So what it will do? It will save you a lot of time and lot of yeah, what do you call this computational capability. Okay. Any doubt? No? Okay. So what happens? See, sampling an analog signal results in the sampled analog signal which can still take on any value in a continuous range. In a continuous range means amplitude. Okay. So amplitude can take any continuous values from minus infinity to infinity. Okay. Then we say, then this signal, it is digitized by rounding off its value to one of the closest permissible numbers or quantized levels, which we also call quantized levels. Okay. Now, in the digital domain, we cannot have amplitude values which varies from minus infinity to infinity. We have to restrict the values within a particular range, and if we are working with both in the positive and the negative range, we usually limit the analog signals within the amplitude range of minus V to plus V. Okay. Now, in this regard, this interval can be partitioned into L subintervals, and in each of these subintervals you have a magnitude which is given by delta V equals to 2V divided by L. For the sake of simplicity, I will take the interval as minus 10 and 10 volt. Okay. So if I have to calculate delta V, it is given by 2 into 10, which is equals to 20, and L is, say for example, L equals to 4. Okay. So this is 4. So how much I get? I get a value of 5. Now say for example, we take these values. So we have 0, then we have 5 because 5 is the delta V. Similarly, in the negative domain, we will be having minus 5. Over here, we will be having 10, and in bottom, we will be having, in the negative domain, we will be having minus 10. So, see what we have done. We have partitioned this minus 10 to 10 volt region into L subintervals. In this case, we have taken L equals to 4. So we have partitioned it into 4 levels. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. or you can say intervals: one interval, second interval, third interval, fourth interval, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So if I have to tell this, what kind of if I say you, okay, you break it down into 5 intervals, then it will be 4. Then you have to break it down into 0 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 10. So it is not able to break it in a proper manner, right? Is it able to break it? No. But definitely it will be able to break it, but there is a disadvantage in that. What is the disadvantage? The disadvantage is, say, minus 10 you are having, 4 is minus 6, again 4 is minus 2, then 2, 6, 10, right? Now, what is the problem? Can you tell me? The problem over here is that the zero line, which is basically the ground line, it will have no values to be interpreted, right? Now this L values, they can only take values which is equal to 2 to the power n, where n varies from 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on. Okay? Any confusion? Hello?
No, sir.
No, no, sir. No, sir.
Okay. So what is this? What is n?
And the natural number, sir.
Huh? What is it? This n, or you can also say something else. So this is called the bit. So it is, if it is 2, so it is called n bit. So we have told that it is 4. We have taken the first example as 4. So it is basically 2 to the power 2. That means we said that then this signal is a 2-bit signal. If it is a 4-bit signal, then 4 multiplied by 4, 16. They would have been 16 sub-intervals. Okay. Now you have done this. Very good. Now what we do, after we have created the sub-intervals, each sample amplitude is approximated by the midpoint value of the sub-interval, okay, in which the sample falls. Now it says suppose I have a value at 2.5. So rounding off, what I will be doing it? I will be putting it a value of 5. Okay. So each samples are approximated to one of the L numbers. Thus, the signal is digitized with the quantized sample taking on any one of the L values. Okay. So what it will be doing? 2.5 will be rounded off to 5. Okay. However, if I get a value 2.49, where it will be rounded off to? It will be rounded off to 0, right? Because it is less than 2.5. So see, even a small difference of 0.01 volt, there is a marked difference in the assigned values. One is assigned a 0 volt and the other is assigned a 5 volt, right? This thing happens even when you try to increase the level of subintervals. At lower subintervals, at lower subintervals, the effect is more prominent. You can visualize the thing, but when you increase the subintervals, then also this problem occurs. Okay, though it becomes minimized, the effect becomes quite minimized when you increase the level of the subintervals, but it still remains. And this rounding off of the values, it introduces an error which is regarded as quantization error. Are you getting my point? Anyone who has not understood what is quantization error? Okay, everyone has understood. So let's get to the next signal, next type of signal. Real signal and complex signals. Okay. A signal xt is a real signal if its value is a real number. Say for example, we have talked about various signals. So in this, what we are having? We are having some real numbers. So this is a real signal. On the contrary, a signal xt is a complex signal if its values is a complex number. Suppose if you are having a signal, especially it happens in the frequency domain signals, h of omega, basically it is h of j omega. So how do you get h of j omega? X of j omega? So if you are having xt, if you implement the Fourier transform, you get x of j omega or omega. Some people write j omega, some people write omega. So both are acceptable. Okay. So when you convert it over here, we get to a complex plane, and the ft values, they are having some x omega values, they are having some complex numbers. Say a j omega, comma b j omega, and so on. Now you would say, sir, when we see the FFT or the Fourier transform of any signal, what you get? You get positive numbers. Where is the complex thing? There is no complex thing. But you have to remember, then when we are looking into the Fourier transform, we are looking into modulus of x omega square. This is the power spectrum, this thing. So modulus of x of j omega with respect to the frequency, right? So we look into the modulus stuff. We are not looking into, when plotting the thing, we are not looking into the normal x of omega. Okay. So the frequency domain signals, they are what they are? They are complex signals, whereas the time domain signals, they are real signals. Okay. I think it's my time is over, so I will stop over here.